Hello again, welcome to another quick, short, sharp video preview of day 2 of Doncaster's St Leger Festival, speaking before day 1 event, so still a little bit in the unknown in terms of the ground and potential draw, etc, etc. Described as good for soft at the minute, and I would imagine it's going to be fairly fair autumnal type ground, so horses that handle a bit of dig will I'm sure be suited to some degree, and you'd imagine real top of the ground, fast ground horses might not be completely suited, but we'll see how day 1 pans out anyway. On to day 2 and various thoughts about certain races at this early stage. Obviously check back on the morning for daily updates on whichbookie.co.uk in terms of selections, but the Flying Scotsman Stakes at 150 is probably the first point to potentially have a bet, and it's the really exciting Hankelo here for Carl Burke, who is one that definitely catches the eye. I thought his performance on debut was pretty sparkling, it must be said, in a decent race at York, when comments suggested that he was nowhere near ready and would prefer softer ground than he got on that occasion. So for me, I think Hankelo is going to be a really interesting proposition in that Flying Scotsman, should I say, at 150. All depends on price, of course, but if he's not favourite, then he's probably backable, because I think he should be. Flying Childers at 225, pretty tricky that race, to be fair. So moving on to the Doncaster Cup feature race on day 2, of course. And it looks as if Sweet William is being brought along gradually to regain his throne in this particular contest, but he's got some interesting options against him. The likes of Hip Hop de Loire could be a massive improver up to this trip and grade for Willie Mullins. And also Pendragon is a fascinating contender, so Mark Prescott's 3-year-old at the bottom as well. But they're going to have to be pretty smart to beat Sweet William on his day, I think. But he's probably priced accordingly. Moving on to the 340 Premier Fillies handicap here, and a horse that I've got a lot of time for, Cape Flora, who's improving hand over fist. I think if the ground were to dry up, then she might be a betting proposition, but very much ground dependent there against some fairly progressive fillies on that type of ground at this time of year. And then the final 2 thoughts come in the 2 handicaps that close the card. 6 Furlong Nursery at 4:45 is an interesting race, but I'm going to give probably another chance to Kinalaji after what was a fairly disappointing run at York last time out, after his run at Thirsk was really advertised, of course, at that same meeting at York, with the winner going on to win the Gimcrack, of course. So Kinalaji into a handicap with potentially a favourable draw on the ground, a bit more in his favour. I certainly think you can give him a chance in the 4:45. And in the 5:20, 6 Furlong handicap as well, Irish Nectar is an interesting horse in the race, definitely. First time headgear could be interesting. I think the ground would have to be really soft, or at least softer than it's probably going to be today. So we'd need to see a few showers for him to get on the checklist for day 2. That's the initial thoughts for day 2. Obviously see how day 1 pans out, and we'll be back in the morning.
Hello and welcome back to Which Bookie's YouTube channel, day 2 of the Doncaster St Leger Festival. You've already heard the thoughts of Will Smith. I am Dave Young, and I'm going to be running you through my early thoughts for day 2 of the St Leger Festival at Doncaster. Now, these are being recorded before day 1's action, so in terms of ground going, draw biases, any bits of extra clues that we could have, we don't have those at the moment. So like we do in all these short and sharp videos, we're giving you our early thoughts, the horses we're sort of looking at, and maybe sometimes they are from a price related perspective, which by the time our final columns come out to be submitted, some of those things might change. And with those changes, you can click a link in the description for the whichbookie.co.uk website that has mine and Will's final thoughts for every day's racing where we have an opinion. So Will's might go up the evening before, especially for this week, so please keep your eye on there. Mine will be up at 8 a.m. the morning of each meeting. Now, good racing on day 1. I'm a bit more excited, I think, for day 2, which is what we're previewing here. Some of the races are a little bit trickier for me to get stuck into. So where I gave opinions on almost every race yesterday, I'm going to talk about the ones that I've got a bit more of a stronger stance in. So the 225, the Flying Childers Stakes, Group 2 over 5 furlongs. This looks like a race for me that is got some depth to it. There are a few horses that have got chances, but it's absolutely Lady Imam's to lose. Now, she's been very impressive against her own age. I'm happy to draw a line through the last run in the Nunthorpe, which came at York, probably on quicker ground than ideal. Hard race for 2-year-olds, the Nunthorpe is, and Lady Imam's tracked Asphora. The jockey, rather than following Asphora through to the finish, which would have been the best scenario for us to find out in terms of how our finishing speed and finishing performance would have actually stood up. The jockey decided to move a bit to the right to try and find a bit of a gap, and was short of room, couldn't quite get that gap. When the jockey switched to go back again, sort of back into the path behind Asphora, it did look to me as though Lady Imam took a bit of a full stride or lost a bit of her momentum, and ultimately jolted her top speed. And she did weaken away fairly tamely after that. But I think that the horse lost a little bit of stride in there. And I think when you're going at 5 furlongs running as fast as you possibly can, if you lose a bit of your stride, then that's going to be massively over inflated in the sort of videos and the ways you're looking at it. So, but I think I can definitely excuse the Nunthorpe thing, even regardless of whether she did or didn't lose her stride. Her only defeat came at 6 furlongs against a very, very good horse too. I know there was comments about the owner's son wanting to try the Nunthorpe, which is, again, potentially a reason why they went to that race rather than it being an actual full-blown target to go and win it. They've talked about the Breeders' Cup for her too, but they've got Colin Keane back on board. I feel like this is much more of a logical option to go for. It is a Group 2. Like I say, it's back against her own age. She's officially rated 106. Now, you can take those ratings with a pinch of salt sometimes at this early stage in horses' careers, but she's the best horse in the race. And I think that will stand up. We had a go on her at Goodwood, and that came out nicely to pay dividends. I'm hoping it'll be the same. She looks an okay price. She was about 7-2 when I was writing this stuff up. I haven't reviewed the prices today, but look, she's a horse that's firmly on my mind for the column for Friday's racing. The 3 o'clock, the Doncaster Cup Stakes, Group 2 over 2 miles 2. It's a race that, for me, is Sweet Williams to lose. Head of the market, but he's very hard to oppose here. His race last time behind Trawlerman, I thought was a really, really good effort. Right up there to be as good a run as I've seen him run for a long time, I'd say. He was in front of Sunway at Goodwood, and this is over a little bit further. I don't see how that form could possibly get reversed. Hip Hop de Loire was my Ebor fancy, who drifted like a barge on the day. Stablemate Ethical Diamond was well backed, and Julia Biged. Now, he's a bit of a slower horse, Hip Hop de Loire, which is why the step up from 1 mile 6 furlongs to 2 mile 2 is likely to suit. He got in a 111 RPR for that defeat in the Ebor, despite that not being his ideal trip, really. Sweet Williams about 115, I think, 116. So he's got a bit to find with that horse, but not insurmountable. So you can see, and I do respect him. And of course, it's Willie Mullins, but I do think this is Sweet Williams to lose. We'll have to keep an eye on the price because there's a basement price for every single horse, but he is the most likely winner of the Doncaster Cup Stakes. He's priced accordingly, but depending on how big that price is in terms of favouritism, he may rate as a bet. In the Premier Fillies Handicap, this is a 340, a Class 2 over 1 mile, 4 furlongs. I think there's a horse that's, whether it's going to again make the column or not, I don't know. It is a horse that I've already had a bet on, and I think it's worth taking a second look at Kitty Furnival. She ticks a lot of the trends boxes for this particular race. There's been 8 renewals of this race. I think it came in 2016, but there wasn't a race in 2022. One from one left-handed as well, on turf anyway. The horse has been on the all-weather too. Officially rated 89, but she's posted 8 RPRs from her last 9 races in excess of 90. So that's at least showing a consistent model that she is. She's ridden by a claimer for the first time, Jack Callan. Jack Callan's only ridden once for the Chriswoods, and he won on that horse at Thirst. So look, it's a small sample size for those sort of things, but it does look like a bookie with a sign of intent. £5 coming off this horse when she's running figures that are above her mark anyway, make me feel like she's well overpriced, and like I say, is well worth a second look. So they'd be my actual thoughts for Friday in terms of races I've already gone through that I think that are worth mentioning. Please make sure you're liking the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, you can do, and you want to do so, and we'll be back again for Saturday's fancies, where we may even have our dip into some of the Irish racing too.